Welcome to Black Tie Optional.
I'm Sydney.
I'm Colleen.
Let's get into it. Literally everybody, vendors, brides, mother of the brides, everybody needs to listen.
Wedding planning is not just picking out colors and flowers, but a lot of times, like, we have to be the bad guy. And it's like, we cannot achieve this level of detail, without this level of investment. Good things take time, and building your brand takes time. If you want the dance floor to be popping,
better get on it.
You better pop it yourself.
I swear.
That you set the tone for your wedding.
Amen. This is a one-shot deal.
You can't redo this
absolutely.
And it's just like, I feel like there are so many people that get into the industry and they do not take it seriously enough. Hello, everybody. We're so pumped to have Gretchen Larkan here today.
Yes.
Gretchen, tell us all about planning, kind of how you got into it. A little bit about you.
I feel like I don't have the most common career trajectory as other wedding planners, or maybe not, but I had no plans to start my own business, no plans of really doing this as a career at all. I went to college and got my degree in nutrition. And at the time, the college, it was hospitality and nutrition. And I had all of these science credits from high school. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do dietetics because that's what fits. I truly had no career aspirations. I had nothing that I really wanted to do. I thought it was marketing, and I spent one semester in the business college and was like, see ya. This is not meant for me. I'm a creative, hands-on. So when they were, everything tests and business law and, sitting behind a computer, I knew that wasn't for me. And so I switched to, hospitality and dietetics, but the concentration was in nutrition. So I still got to take all the fun, classes like food law and event planning 101, which back then was I'm aging myself. But back then, 10 years ago, it was completely different what it is now. We didn't really learn a lot about event planning. It was just a fun class. I actually, growing up, I wanted to go to culinary school. That's what I thought I was going to do. I love to cook, and I just thought that that's what I would end up doing. I thought I would go to college and then maybe go to culinary school or find something, within that industry. But, once... when you're a senior as a dietetic student, you have to do an internship. And I just knew that God was calling me to do something else, and it wasn't a fit. And so my mentor at the time was getting married, and she said, you and my wedding planner, I think that you're very similar, and I think that you would love to do that. So why don't you reach out to her? And I did. And so I just said, hey, I'd love to shadow a few weddings to see if this is something I might be interested in. Yeah. And at the time, had not done a single thing, didn't know anything about weddings. None of my friends were getting married, I wasn't in that world in the slightest. But she said yes. Actually at the time it was kind of a sister company. There was a wedding side, a corporate side. The lady who owned the corporate side or was, managing the whole business, she said, here's their contact, and, we'll see kind of what she has. And she responded to me and said, yes, you can shadow these 3 weddings. And so Perfect. I did, and I ended up loving it. I had no idea what I was walking into at all. But I literally walked in and she said, okay, will you go set up, this, it was not, it wasn't sit down, let me tell you about my story. It's here's what I need you to do. Just jump in. And I actually love that approach. And I use that now. It's definitely a jump in and sink or swim kind of thing.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
I loved it. And it was so fast paced and so much fun. And I loved all the vendors that I worked that first wedding with. And it's funny because I got married 4 years ago, and I hired that exact same team that did that wedding.
I love
they
that.
First wedding on you, and you're
yes. And they were, and I was having this conversation with the florist that I used yesterday. I'm like, I hired you because of that wedding, that I was this young and dumb, 21-year-old going what am I walking into, and what is this whole world? But I knew that I loved it. And that was Amanda Reed. It was Bates Reed's Brides then, but that's who, and she was kind of just getting started. And then, in the off season of weddings, which, around the winter time, the corporate side, Amy, said, Amy Bates, she was like, we have these corporate events like, that you can help out with. And I, needed something to do. So it kind of just like took off from there. And I was, working as an event assistant, and it kind of just went through like the rest of the year. And actually one of my favorite events that I've ever done to this day, I worked under their company. It was a mommy blogger event in Bentonville. And it's funny saying that now because that's what we called it, but that's like influencing,
Right.
now. But we flew in all these producers from LA, and they pitched these TV shows to these mommy bloggers, these influencers. And I planned like all their transportation in the conference, and it was super cool. And they really, it was just Amy needed someone that like a boots on the ground person. And she was like, hey, you can do this. And it's like a 4-week contract. And so it was just like little jobs like that. But it truly introduced me into like the entire world of not only wedding planning, but corporate event planning. Mm-hmm. And then as I got more into that, and I was doing weddings and I was doing some corporate stuff, I was in Fayetteville at the time and kind of realized that just I didn't want to live there anymore. I went to college there, and all my friends had kind of like went their separate ways. And I was like, I'm never going to meet anyone if I meet on the weekends or work on the weekends. I'm never going to see my family. And so that was truly, and as like dumb as that sounds, that's what really pushed me to the corporate world, because I was like, I love event planning, but I can't work every Saturday. I can't do it. And that's what I was doing. So I'm just working as an assistant, trying to get as much experience as I could. So I randomly just applied for a bunch of different jobs in Little Rock. I have a huge group of girlfriends here, and there's really no other reason besides like my brother was in med school here, and I was just like, what, Little Rock is comfortable for me since I grew up in Jonesboro. It's, not too far from my parents, who I'm super close to. So I was like, what, Little Rock, I'm going to give you a shot. But I applied for a bunch of corporate event planning jobs, ended up in nonprofit. Okay. That was my first job in Little Rock. I was the event coordinator for the Arkansas Food Bank. And I spent about a year there, and then, moved into more of a corporate setting in healthcare for about 5 years. And then I moved into tech. And then kind of in that time, I met my husband. I got married, and I planned my own wedding because I was like, I can do this.
Yeah.
And that kind of refueled my passion for weddings. And I was like, I love this, and what am I doing? As much as like the corporate filled a void in my life for part of the time, I was desperate for that like design. I was desperate for that more of a connection, kind of what you get with brides and families. And so my husband was actually the one who super encouraged me. He was like, you know what? You have a great corporate career. The worst thing that can happen is that you keep doing this.
Yeah. Right.
So he was like, do what you love and start your own company. So I did. It took about 6 months or so to kind of get it off the ground. And that's when I was kind of transitioning into a new job on accident. I started it when I was in healthcare, and I thought, I can do this with my eyes closed. I need to start this so I can, get it rolling, and then I can just, move when I'm ready. Well, I ended up transitioning into like a tech role. And so I started my company, and then 3 days later I started a new job. And
That's
so,
a lot.
not knowing kind of what it would turn into, but I was like, I got to keep my corporate job rolling. And actually I completely floated my company on my corporate salary. I was like, I don't want to take out a loan. Like, I don't want any risk here. I just want to see if this works out.
Yeah.
And thankfully it did. And within 8 months or so, I was quitting my corporate job and working for myself full time.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it was it was the most stressful time of my life. And not because I was doing something that I didn't love. Like, I loved what I was doing, staying up till 3 and 4 a.m. Like, I would come home from work and then work on my side hustle. Mm-hmm. And it was just taking a toll on me, where I just couldn't manage both.
Right.
But I wanted to, I just wanted to get to a certain point to where I was like, I can do this, and I'm not going to quit my corporate job knowing that not knowing if my company would survive. And so, a year later, I was like, oh, I need to be doing this and then I thought, if I don't take the risk now and just jump off the cliff and hope it works out, then I never will. And so I did. And then it paid off because my company just really ramped up from there. And it's kind of been nonstop ever since.
I mean, life is so short. It's like, why not? Like, if you want to do something, it's like, what's the worst that could happen? You just have to keep doing what you're already doing.
Yeah. And I feel like there's so many people in this industry who they come from so many different backgrounds, and there's like all of the planners that I know and love. We all have such a different story, but that's what makes us like our company's unique, and that's what makes our planning unique. A lot of what I've learned and a lot of what I know and implement in my company, I learned in the corporate world.
Oh yeah,
that's where I grew a backbone.
Yeah, I would say you definitely like everything you, even in college when you did marketing and things like you gathered something from everything you've done.
Yeah. And I think even just like looking at, what I've done, all of the jobs and events that I've planned, like they've all made me a better planner.
Oh, yeah.
I've made tons of mistakes, but all of those mistakes have made me, who I am, and they've made me like better.
Absolutely.
And it kind of gave me that time to like grow up a little bit and really kind of like see the world, see what, because I think that if I would have maybe jumped right into wedding planning after falling in love with it, I wouldn't be as successful, because a lot of my clients and a lot of my, like still to this day, are people that I've worked with in the corporate world. Like even like the food bank, I do their fundraisers from them now. 10 years later, they hired my company after hiring me as an employee.
Yeah.
Right out of, and honestly, something I wasn't sure. Like I didn't start out knowing like, oh, I want to own a company. I want to, work for myself. Like I didn't really know all of that. I thought honestly it was very intimidating. And betting on yourself is hard.
Yeah.
So, but I knew, so my boss that I worked for at the food bank, she was like your definition of like girl boss, as cliche as it sounds, but she really pushed me she knew that, she kind of took me under her wing and said like, I want what's best for you, and I'm going to push you out and give you these opportunities and like bet on you. And she was like the boss that I want to be, or that I aspire to be. And so once I kind of saw that and like had that experience and had that mentorship, I was like, I can do this for other people too.
Yeah.
And so she had like a big influence in my business, of, wanting to take young girls under my wing and show them, this is the kind of like boss and this kind of business that I want to run. And I want to take girls under my wing and then kind of let them fly too. Cause that's kind of what I wish someone would have done to me. Now I was given like amazing opportunities, but as far as like being shown the ropes and just, and just kind of talk through the things that happen and, just teaching. I love to teach. Like I want to take all of my experiences and like teach them to someone so they don't have to go through all the mistakes that I did.
Which
can
is
be successful.
The coolest. I mean, because so many people, I feel like in this industry, like it's like their information is a locked box. Like they do not want to share. But like if somebody messages me, I'll be the first person to tell you like, oh, you want to know what camera I use, or you want to know what I use to edit or whatever. Like I'm going to share, because I mean, at the end of the day, like you are you, and like there's not another you.
Yeah.
And I wish more people would like understand that,
It's so funny because the other day I had this like 3-hour phone call with Stephanie Benton. She's a planner out of Northwest Arkansas. We actually met when I was working for Amanda, because she worked for her for a long time. And we just like were laughing and just talking about like all the things and what we've learned and like mistakes we've made and like client mishaps, stuff like that. It's so funny to just like, because truly one of the biggest things that I miss about having a company and being the owner is that I have no coworkers.
Yeah.
And I mean, I met some of my like best girlfriends like working a corporate job, and a lot of them like turned into my clients and got married and said, hey, will you plan my wedding? And so that's so fun. I mean, just like being able to like talk and encourage other people. And all of us know that there is plenty enough work to go around. So there's really no room for any of that. Like I might as well encourage, and, we have so many people, that reach out or that we see and like, how do you get into this? And how can we do this? Your job looks so fun. And, I love to give people opportunities and like, hey, come work a wedding if you're interested. And if it's something that, and then, most of the time when they get there, I'm like, are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
Seriously, because I think so many people think like, oh, I could do that. Like they think,
Or it's just glamorous.
I swear, they think planners' jobs are just like the easiest thing ever. And I'm like, you do not even understand. Your job to me is the hardest in the industry, to be honest. I mean, there's so many hats you have to wear.
Yeah.
You have to know how to design. You have to know how to plan. You have to know how to budget. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. People don't get it.
So speaking of, there are obviously across the board so many different types of planners, you know, day of coordinator, full planner, all the things. How did you come about figuring out what kind of planner you wanted to be?
Yeah. So, I mean, I started out, since I didn't really have a full planner experience for my own wedding, I really had no idea how like the process worked. Like I had a day of coordinator that I absolutely loved, and he executed my wedding exactly how I would have done it. But I really just kind of had to figure out along the way, like what all it entailed. And truly it wasn't until after I did a few weddings that I was like, oh, you know, that. So now I do mostly full service, just because, there's, you know, pretty much 3 categories that wedding planning is, and it's design, logistics, and coordination. Most of the, you know, full service, like you are, you know, building a design for someone, curating a design based off of their aesthetic and what they're wanting for their wedding. The logistics part is just like building their timeline, all of those things that, you know, the vendors kind of follow for the weekend of the wedding. And then there's the coordination piece, which is all of that, you know, day of stuff that you typically deal with. And when I first started, I wasn't doing full service weddings. It's actually very hard to kind of just start out doing that. And I'm so glad I didn't, because I wasn't ready.
Right.
And so I did take a few partial and month of weddings just to get my bearings, to know what it truly felt like to go through the process. And I'm so glad I did, because those weddings are the hardest. You know, when you look at, you know, different packages that people offer, and those are so many different things. Each planner is so unique in what they offer. I know that everyone can't afford a full service planner. So I've tried to be able to offer, you know, something custom to the client. And it's usually that's determined like after a consultation. So once I talk to someone, kind of understand, because I get a lot of calls that's like, you know, I'm a very organized person. And then they'll kind of tell me like, oh, you know, this and that. And you truly don't know really what you're walking into until you talk to the person. So I try not to offer those things on the forefront, because then I feel like expectations and things are lost.
Yes.
And so I like to go through that process and say, hey, like, what are you looking for? How do you see like a relationship with a planner? You know, what are you wanting? Who all's involved? That kind of thing. And then I kind of determine where to put them. You know, if it's something where it's like, I don't think you need a full service, then I'm going to say, I think you need this, but I can't offer that to you, and go find someone else. Or like, I'll refer them to someone that I know does that well. And so like, the difference for me, full service is, you know, kind of holding your hand through the entire process. It's truly for, you know, I have brides who are super type A and super organized and know exactly what they want, but they're full service. It's because they need the level of, you know, attention, and they want affirmation. They want someone saying, am I making the right decision? Yes. You know, I put all these things together, but do they work? They want someone who, you know, is looking at all the details with them, collaborating with them, offering insight. And that's just our knowledge of the industry. You know, we're offering that and saying like, you know, even if but then I have girls who come in and are like, whatever you want to do is great. And so that's really fun too, because then I have like completely creative control, but it's also nice to have a little bit of a challenge with a full service client where it's like, hey, they have a strong opinion too. And you want to do your best to make sure that they're getting what they want. Like the end product is exactly what they want too.
Well, and there's value in just the knowledge you have or the experience. Like, so they're coming to you like, I know what I want, but I do want your opinion. You know what I mean? Like, I know, but you have so much knowledge, or you've been through, oh, this could go wrong. We really need to think about this.
Or even just, you know, things wedding planning is not just picking out colors and flowers and, you know, like there's so much more than that. And so I think that's a lot what people don't realize. It's like there's all these pieces that are missing, where you might know exactly what you want, but what is that?
Right.
And that's kind of, you know, what we do with our clients. Now, backing down from full service, I've offered partial in the past. I've offered month of in the past. My partial clients have been very few and far between, because there has to be like that boundary, that expectation of what you're really getting. Because honestly, 9 times out of 10, my partial clients have turned into full service. They think, they're like, oh, you know, I'm organized. I've got this, you know, I'm going to do all these things. But then they still kind of expect me to, you know, be there as they make the decisions. But that's not a true partial, in my opinion.
Right.
I was giving full service advice on a partial contract. And so I've been really hesitant to do those.
Yeah.
But I have taken on a few clients who I think, who may have planned events themselves in the past. But a lot of them want that creative, like, collaboration. I have a client right now who she does events and, you know, she could do my job, but she's the bride. So, she just needs someone who can make sure that, you know, just my knowledge of weddings is much different than her knowledge of just like corporate events.
Exactly.
So she was like, even telling me, she was like, you know, this is what I need. I need someone to tell me, like, if they think that 4 larger installs at the wedding is better than doing like 12 larger arrangements. You know, like things are so specific. And I'm like, yes, okay, that is a great partial, you know, because like she's doing a lot of the legwork. She's splitting the communication with vendors, but you know, she wants someone to just be there and make sure that she's, you know, doing all the right things. But she's still asking my opinion. It's like, are you like, am I thinking correctly on this? And like, you know, and it may not even be like my knowledge of the industry, but even knowledge of like wedding venues, you know, here. So like, she's like, how do they do things? Because I've never worked here, you know, kind of thing. That's really fun when I get, and a lot of times, a lot of those are, like design challenges, which I love. They're really specific design influence. They might be like an interesting combination of colors and things. And so it's always, and when I'm doing, you know, that kind of planning from, you know, a full service where I have a lot of creative control, it's so much easier because I'm curating the design from the start. It's much more of a challenge when someone else is curating it and then I'm just kind of putting the pieces together and like truly perfecting it throughout the process. And then there's month of, which I would say is probably the lowest. No one really does day of coordination anymore, as far as I know, because truly, if you did day of coordination, that's someone handing you a folder and you walking in day of, and that is scary.
Can we just put a gigantic red exclamation mark? Because today somebody messaged me and they were like, yeah, so this DJ, like, they also offer like day of coordination. And I was like,
you can't.
How do you say no without being like, that is a terrible idea? Because I mean, like you said, you don't know anything about them. They know nothing about you. Like, and a lot of the times I feel like they're supposed to be the ones that keep things on track or like, you know, they help with family photos. Like, that doesn't even happen. A lot of the times I'm like, where is your coordinator? I can't even find them.
Well, you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Well, and not even that. What if you're like, okay, you know, I understand everyone has to build their portfolio. Everyone has to build their clientele. But if you take on that wedding and the bride wasn't organized or didn't communicate or didn't do all these things, and now it looks like it's your fault.
And you're walking into,
and
I'm
you're
sorry,
like,
a shit show.
I didn't do this. Like,
and I mean, I've even done that when I've done a month of, because, you know, as much as you try to get all the details, and you know, try to get as much information as you can. Like, there might be some vendor that just shows up randomly, like, she never mentioned you. You know, and so day of, I just don't recommend. Month of is truly, you know, you coming in before the wedding, making sure all the contracts, making sure like look good, making sure there's no huge holes, and just making sure that it will be that you could execute it up to your expectations. It may not be the design that reflects your style or even your level of expertise, but you can at least make it, you know, run smoothly. And that's truly the point of a month of coordination. There is no time for your design and anything to, like, you can't influence at all at that point. So if you are taking on like a month of coordination, it truly doesn't reflect your work like in pictures. It only reflects on like as far as like logistics go.
Right.
And so that's why it's also kind of it's hard as you're building your portfolio, because a lot of those weddings, like while it's great experience, it's not building the portfolio that you want, because it's not your design reflected in the slightest.
Exactly.
So switching gears really quick, you know, I know you said you kind of had the background in corporate and that kind of helped like gain clients and stuff, but if someone wanted to be a planner and they wanted that aesthetic of like, this is my style, but I'm not finding weddings like this, how would you recommend attracting your people?
Yeah. So you're not going to, just accepting honestly that you're not going to be super successful off the bat. You have to be okay with, because good things take time.
Yes.
And building your brand takes time. Finding the right clients, or finding how to navigate even like the consultation process to find those right clients takes time. I think a lot of times after an inquiry, going through the consultation, I kind of know based on our conversation if the client is going to be a good fit for me or not.
Yes.
I will never hire someone without speaking or I will never, take a contract without speaking to them first. I have a lot of moms of the brides, mother of the grooms who call me and want my, want to hire me. But they're saying, they're not getting engaged for a few months and they want to go ahead and start the process. And that's really hard, because as much as I would love to take that contract, it's not their vision that really I'm executing or trying to, it's the brides, or the couple.
Yep.
So I try not to do that. And gosh, where are we even going with that?
No, I mean that because okay, if someone was
that was so off track.
No, not really. I mean, that's good information, but you have like a certain style. Like, let's say you had a certain style. Would you say get other vendors together and do a styled shoot? Like, how to kind of reflect, like, how do you find?
Because I feel like there are different styles per planners. Like you have like rock and roll bride, you know what I'm saying? And then you have things like Arkansas bride, like, you know what I mean? And so I feel like there's so many different styles of people, like people that do a lot of color versus people that do a lot of like, and
I don't know, like every planner, like myself, like I'm a color girl and can do really well with color, but I've done tons of black and white weddings that I've loved.
Right.
And I don't know, like, yes, good things take time. As much as I love a styled shoot, I think it's so fun to like challenge yourself creatively. But a lot of people, send inspiration from style shoots and say, this is what I want for my wedding. And a lot of times that is absolutely
unrealistic.
Completely. And you hate to say that because but a lot of times like we have to be the bad guy. And
no,
it's like, you cannot achieve this level of detail, without this level of investment. But as far as like, finding your style as a planner, or even just, how do you show people that and how do you gain those clients that maybe match your aesthetic? It's not even marketing or anything that is, I don't know, that you can see, or like social media or things like that. It's word of mouth.
I agree.
It's totally gaining the trust of good clients and having them tell people about what you can do. Yeah. Because you may not have, if I started my company today, I may not have enough content that shows my true potential for a year, maybe 2 years.
I mean, they say 3 years to success, like to get to the point that you're so successful that you can quit your day job. They say 3 years. I feel like that's realistic. I mean, that's realistic.
I think if I wouldn't have had any corporate experience, it would have taken, if I was just starting from the ground up, the only reason my success really it was propelled is because I had people who were saying, why aren't you doing this?
Exactly.
And like, we would hire you tomorrow.
Exactly.
And a lot of trying to figure it out. You already knew, kind of.
And all of the clients who hired me, like right out of the gate, were like, oh, hello, I'm taking clients for, weddings. They knew me because someone else had like introduced me to them, or they said like, oh, one of my first clients, she was like, hey, I work at the food bank and someone recommend, and like now, she was my very first bride and she like helps me on wedding days.
Hey guys, just wanted to take a brief pause in the episode to tell you thank you for supporting our podcast. It would mean the world to us if you could subscribe to whatever platform you are listening on. Let's get back to the episode.
But like word of mouth, I feel like is everything. I mean, even I will have people that approach me and they're like, give me a business card. I'm like, I don't know. I don't own them.
I
do everything by word of mouth. And but I truly believe that is how people are like, how are you so busy? How do you blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, word of mouth is everything. If you trash somebody's wedding day, everybody and their mother and all of Facebook and Google, they're going to know.
100%.
They're going to know.
And that's one of the scary things about having a Google listing or, a Facebook. But if you're a good planner, you have them because you have people singing your praises. And I'm happy to have a lot of people who continue to refer me even like years down the line. They're like, our experience was so good, and we gained like a friend, and they're still referring me to my clients, and I love that. It's the people, it's all about your impression on people. I have, and even those people who I made those impressions on, like I was brand new, but I think I was working so hard and that they just saw that I was bending over backwards to make their day, and I still do that. My work ethic has not changed in the slightest. If not, I've only become I've become older and I've become more broken. So wedding days are harder, but and I need a lot more help than I used to. I'm like, I need help lifting this. But I don't know, I just think that if you just show who you are in the beginning, and also a lot of that, it's not about being perfect at all. It's about making mistakes, and it's about owning up to them. It's like, hey, I completely dropped the ball on this, but I'll fix it.
Right.
And a lot of what I tell people about wedding planning, it's not being able to be perfect. It's not, you're not selling yourself to say like, oh, well, if you hire me, I can guarantee that your wedding will be absolutely perfect. That's not true.
You should never.
But you're going to guarantee that whatever happens, because there's so many things that are out of your control, that you're going to work for them.
Listen, can I tell a story?
Yes.
Just like quick story. So I have a friend, Ayla, that does full service planning in Alaska. Okay. She had a wedding this past weekend at Alyeska Resort, which is like big. These people probably spent some good money, They had a band that had to drive from Anchorage to Girdwood. If you're not familiar, it is a 2-lane road that sidewinds a mountain. Okay. Wreck. The band is stuck. Okay. They're saying the road's not going to open till 10 p.m. It is noon. The wedding starts at 4 o'clock. Okay. Do you know this band whipped a Yui, called somebody with a small plane, had them small plane fly them. Literally, they had to put all of their band stuff, everything on this weight. 1,000-pound max. They were at 950 pounds. Flew in. Everything was good by the time the wedding started.
That's amazing.
That is how every single vendor should be on a wedding day. Because this is a one-shot deal.
You can't do that.
Absolutely.
And it's just like, I feel like there are so many people that get into the industry and they do not take it seriously enough, And it's just so frustrating. Anyways, I had to share because I was like, talk about that level of commitment.
Absolutely.
There's no telling what they paid this person.
I'm going to bounce off of that a little bit, because I think that, I cannot guarantee success on your wedding day.
Right.
But I can, help you build a team that will work together to their best ability to make the day that you dreamed of.
Amen.
And I think, I couldn't do my job without the vendors that I love and that just work for me. Because I guarantee you, one of us is going to need something.
Oh, yeah.
The florist is going to need me to jump in. I'm going to need someone to jump in with me. It's always a team effort.
Yes.
It's never one person is responsible for making a wedding great. So, picking your vendors is so important. And it's not just, if you pick a great planner, great, but you need the other support as well, because they're going to make or break your day.
100%.
So that's a good way to segue into expectations of a planner. How do you lay that out to how do you lay out expectations to your clients?
Just about hiring vendors, or just expectations in general?
Even of the day, our clients coming in with a lot of expectations, oh, I expected you to be the cleanup crew, or, oh, I expected you to do this. How do you kind of branch in?
So that has kind of evolved over the years. I really, I don't know how many times I've amended my contract, because I've had, if I have one person burn me, I'm like, oh, I'm updating that.
Literally.
And I literally had this conversation yesterday with a florist, and I was just like, my stakes have made my contract, because I try to be as honest and upfront as possible when I'm doing a consultation. Just because, they might be doing other consultations with planners too. And that happens a lot.
Exactly.
You're bidding yourself against other planners, and that's totally fine. I want them to do that to find their right fit. But my full service expectations might not be someone else's full service expectations. So, I love my job, and, but that's not the only thing about me. Right. I'm also a mom. I'm also a wife, and those things hold the priority in my life. The good thing about wedding planning is that nothing's an emergency. Yeah. And so, if I need to move a meeting, if, I have my daughter unexpectedly when I'm doing a Zoom call, those are things that I can't really control. And I set that's just me talking about expectations on the front end, but all of my clients are so wonderful about that. They understand that because we're all human, I'm not a robot, but I also, you have to kind of figure out what works for you. And that looks different for everyone, whether that's, taking meetings certain days a week or even hours. Because, a lot of brides who are planning their wedding, they have full-time jobs and, we can't plan their entire wedding after 5 o'clock Monday through Friday. So, we have to just set the expectations of, this is kind of what we need for meeting time. Whether that's taking off work or just setting, one day aside that we can knock out a bunch of vendors at once, which is kind of what I like to do. I just like to be upfront and honest, and a lot of times, there might be expectations throughout the process, and we have to just clarify, where people are like, oh, well, what do we need to do about this? And I'll say, oh, well, or, there might be someone who is kind of pushing my boundaries a little bit, and I might have to be a little bit stricter with that client. Just because I take on a certain amount of clients per year, and I want to be able to offer a level of service to each of them. Yes. And so that's even. And, some clients require a lot more than others, and that's okay. Yeah. But I just think being upfront and honest from the forefront about, what is truly my responsibility, what is their responsibility. Yes. Looking at their planning period. Some people plan a wedding in 6 months, some people plan a year and a half. Right. So, they might see someone like, oh, you're doing so much, with a certain person, and then, but wedding planning is a marathon. Vendor communication is always ongoing, no matter how long your planning period is. And I just think that setting those clear responsibilities of like, you need to get your dress at this time. You need to, start thinking about like colors, and I can start thinking about these things. Here's a guest book or a guest list template. This is how, these are things that have worked in the past for my clients that you should probably start doing. But there's definitely clear responsibilities of an individual, a bride, and there's responsibilities of the planner. Yes. Most of the planner responsibilities are on the vendor side. So we're, making sure that we're building your vendor team. Making recommendations, doing consultations, getting quotes, kind of lining out your budget. And then we kind of leave a lot of, like the personal stuff to the bride, which a lot of people don't know. So many times I have consultations, and it's a lot of talking through what, planning entails, because a lot of people have no idea.
No, exactly. There's no baseline.
No. And there's only so much you can Google. And something that I feel like does like a disservice to this industry is giving someone a brochure and say, these are the bullet points that I offer. And truly, you can't bullet point what a planner does. No. You can't. You can say, oh, I, assist in your planning your budget, and I, recommend vendors, and I negotiate contracts, and that's all good and dandy, but that's not what actually happens. There's so many things. And so I like to talk through that completely with all of my clients. And if they have any, or potential clients, if they have anything that comes up in the process, I'm like, okay, this may be a misconception, this is actually what happens. Right. Or like, this is what someone tells you to do. This is what the internet tells you. This is how I do it. Yep. So, even like, this is such a basic thing, but like RSVPs, a lot of people think, we just do RSVP 4 weeks for our wedding. Well, sometimes before our wedding. So a lot of times, the venue or the caterer might need like a guaranteed head count, like 30 days out. But if you do the RSVP, so many people don't RSVP in time, and you're giving yourself no room for
wiggle room.
Yeah. So a lot of times I do like a 6 week, and then I give myself 2 weeks to reach out on behalf of my clients, get that final RSVP so we have a set number, and that it just kind of, I don't know, you're just, when you hire a planner, there's so many things that we do, so many things that we practice that just kind of alleviate the risk. You know, we have these things that have worked well in the past, and those are the tools that we give our clients.
Yes.
So yeah.
No, that answered it. Do you have any wedding trends like coming up in the next 12 to 18 months that you're like excited to do, or are you like, oh, I wish this wasn't a trend?
No, honestly, I love a good trend, and I'm trendy in my personal life, and I love to like find new things and go full force. But and this may not even be a trend, but in the past year or so, and we see this even more going forward, is that everyone's just kind of throwing the rule book out the window.
I love it.
And I love it too. It's so refreshing, and I love that we can sit down in a meeting and I can say, you know what? A lot of people say, well, what am I supposed to do? And I love being able to say whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I can help you navigate how to do that. It's not, and a lot of times it is still giving that knowledge of like, this is traditional,
right?
You know, this is what people typically do, but it's also giving that freedom to say, you can do what you want. And if you want to enjoy your cocktail hour before you're introduced into the reception, you absolutely can.
Yes.
If you want to get coffee on the in the morning on the day of your wedding, you absolutely can. You know, there's just so many things that a lot of people are intimidated by the schedule, by the timeline of like, this is exactly how to do it, and every wedding has to be the same, so it will be successful. And that's absolutely not true.
No.
Something I do from the forefront is just say, you know, what do you want? What do you want your wedding day to look like?
Yeah.
Because from there, I can tell a lot about how the planning process is going to be.
Oh, yeah.
And and I know what I'm working towards. And I think that, you know, you talked about expectations earlier. What I show a lot of my potential clients, or even just like new clients at their first meeting, I'm like, this is a timeline, and this is a design board that I've come up with. And then this is the product. So I'll show them like a finished gallery. And so I'll say, you know, this is how things like go from paper to actuality.
Yeah.
And so that's, a lot of girls love to see that, because they're like, what am I doing? You know, like I want to see this timeline, because I want to know, you know, and the beauty of a timeline is the bride has worked, you know, months with the planner on, you know, these specific things. You know what's going on, but you're not responsible for making any of it happen.
Yeah.
So that's like such a sense of, like calmness, because they're like, we know all these things are going to be happening in the background, but we get to enjoy our day. And that's the beauty of full service. And even just like design boards, a lot of people are like, so how is this going to look on my, because a lot of it's inspiration, or honestly, I draw so much, because the beauty of having a full service planner who like curates a design for you is like trying to create something that you can't find on Pinterest, because no one's ever done it.
Yeah.
And so yesterday, one of my floral consultations was just a bunch of scribbles, because I couldn't find inspiration of what we were talking about doing. And I love that. That's so fun, but it's so fun to see how it turns out. And the process in itself can be so fun.
I don't know if that's like standard for planners to share, like, here was our plans, here's like, and then it executed with the galleries. But that is amazing, because that's something like photo and video. I always, before I book a client, I send them our full galleries, because I'm like, I want you to see my work as a whole.
Yeah, and I will definitely request one.
Yeah.
Because a lot of girls will say, like, I love this picture and I love this picture. And I'm like, but have you seen the full product? And actually how I sold a photographer to one of my actually good friends is she was like, well, I love her pictures. You know, I love her Instagram feed. And I'm like, well, you don't need to be looking at feeds. You need to be looking at galleries.
Yes.
Because that's how people get disappointed in their final product, is they're not seeing the full scope. Or if you're, you know, hiring a photographer who may not specialize in weddings, you have to compare and see, because they're used to shooting things that other, you know, photographers aren't.
Yeah.
Or if you want a more detailed photographer, you know, like everyone has their different strengths.
Yes.
And so depending on what is really important, like, you know, if I know I have a bride who's going to want all these detail shots and spend so much time on it and get all these little snippets, like I know who I need to recommend to her,
Exactly.
who is going to, like, you know, bring that to life and execute that vision. And that's by seeing full galleries and really, I don't know, how do you hire someone or feel confident if you can't see like their work?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like, and I know for me, like I'm very documentary style. Like you have to live in the moment. Like I'll pose you for photos, you know, but like you have to live. It's not like stand here, put your arm here, now tuck your, you know what I'm saying?
Okay,
like
scene,
I
act.
want to photograph real life versus there are people that, like you said, they're like so detailed, editorial, like, you know, they want that. That is not me. If that's what you want, you better go somewhere else. So,
and you know, like even going off that, I know that I'm not the right fit for every client who contacts me. And so part of growing and part of, you know, I don't want to take every client and I can't that inquires with me. So I want to be able to make my best judgment on the forefront of, you know, who I think, will work well with me personality wise, who will have that trust in me and, so that we can work together and really, you know, execute what they're wanting. And then, just even being friends with other planners, like I know who to refer to if they're looking for a certain thing.
Right.
Or if I don't, then I'm like, here's a list, you know, good luck. But you know, that's the beauty of it. It was like, we all have different strengths and we all have clients who, they fit with us for a reason. So
exactly.
If you had a dream and like somewhere you would plan a wedding, a destination wedding, where would be your dream location?
That's so funny to say that because I don't think about that kind of stuff, which is, I mean, I guess like photographers, y'all are, you know, used to shooting and
I don't know.
And
like bucket lists.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't really either, to be honest.
Because
it
I think
on
that
the person.
I've had, I mean, even I've worked in several different markets and it's so fun working in like different states and things like that because it's just a whole different world other places. But most recently, my last destination wedding was in Charleston, which is one of my favorite places in the world. And that was, I will say, like a bucket list for me just because I love to travel there.
Right.
But I don't know. As a wedding planner, you're thinking like not more on like, I feel like location. It's more of like the details.
Right.
So I could have my dream bucket list here in Little Rock.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like depending on the amount of detail that I get to do because I love tablescape. So if I could do, like I love China and I love, like all of the details that I love mixing prints and all of that stuff. And so if I could just do a dream tablescape, you know, like out of perfectly things that I picked. But if I had to pick, I would probably just say, I love Italy. I went there like 5 years ago to the Amalfi Coast and like, of course that'd be a dream because how fun and how challenging.
Yeah.
And so I would, if I had like a dream, it'd probably be just somewhere I hope to travel.
Yeah.
Could you imagine planning a wedding like overseas though, and
with like even a language barrier of
like, and you're having to pick local vendors? I feel like that would be a huge challenge.
I love a challenge.
I really do feel like that would be rough.
I mean, eventually, obviously, I think the timeline and like timing, you'd have to have a lot to dedicate to it because you're learning. But also, I've done that in different markets. You know, it's. Yes, you can find local people, and it's a lot like finding local vendors here in Little Rock. But I don't know. It's so fun working in different. It's just a breath of fresh air, and just seeing how different people like different things that people do, and it's also like helped my business grow.
Oh yeah,
because I've seen things that other vendors have done, and I'm like, I love that they do that, and why didn't I think of that?
Right.
So I don't know. I love, and I think it would just more like being for, or just really for like the collaborative. Like the collaboration of other vendors is just what makes you a better planner. There's so many things, like I love to plan, I love to design, things like that. But a lot of what makes my work good is other people influencing it. Like a florist coming to me and be like, hey, we could do that, but we could also do this and make it a little bit better. And that's what makes it like
kind of trusting your vendors.
Yeah. Well, and that was like a lot of words to say nothing, but like truly, I think a lot of my designs that have really like just taken off and done really well, it's because they've had someone else look at it and say, hey, if I tweak these few little things, like, and it makes it so much better.
Yeah.
Well, it's just always having a second set of eyes and like people that really specialize in what they do. You know, like you said, I feel like it's so much of a collaborative effort, you know, and it's trusting that vendor when they say, hey, even in terms of like lighting, like do not do a 5 o'clock ceremony, you know, where you're going to have sun beaming into the eyes of everybody in the front row. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just trusting that everybody can do their job.
And even like hiring vendors, you know, I have some influence in that because I say like, this is who I recommend. This is who I've worked with before,
Right.
Who I love and, you know, trust. And, but I'm always open to like working with new vendors too.
Yeah.
But we go into those consultations and I'm not running the meeting, like the floral consultations. They're designers themselves.
Yes.
I want to see, you know, how they take my floor plan and come up with unique ideas. So I might go to 2 florist consults for most of my brides, and I'm going to have 2 complete designs pitched to us.
Yeah.
And the beauty in that is letting my bride pick. You know, I can, you know, lead them to the water. I can lead them to all of these great vendors, but you want them to pick who they feel the most confident in. And so that's how you build like a unique dream team
to them.
Yeah. Because it's truly going to, you know, be in their hands, but I've given them the confidence to say like, this is who, you know, if you go with them, I know you'll be in great hands, but they feel confident in the designer that they're picking as well, knowing that that they've seen their vision and they're going to run with it too.
Yeah. What's one piece of advice to wrap up to tell, like, that you always tell your couples, like one piece of advice, anything to do with weddings? It could be like how to stay true to themselves, or just piece of advice, like soak in a moment.
Yeah. I would probably say the thing I've said the most, and this has nothing to do with planning.
That's fine.
That you set the tone for your wedding.
Amen. Round of applause.
So I think that, you know, I can design a beautiful wedding. I can execute a seamless wedding, but I cannot make your wedding fun.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, let me tell you, do I know what you're saying? Yeah.
Because if you're stressed and you're not having fun, no one else will.
No.
So I say, and that, and not necessarily like, I'm not really speaking from experience. It's just, that's why you hire a planner.
Yes.
Is so that you can enjoy your day. And if you're not, you won't.
Yeah.
Well, and if you're stressed, or then, you know, it's on your mom and your mom's stressed, and then that stresses you out. It's like a domino effect.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so like, that's why you shouldn't skimp on a planner.
Yeah.
You know, find someone who is that you trust, that you don't feel like you have to micromanage, that is going to, no matter what happens that day, whatever fires they have to put out, know that you're going to be happy at the end, and that you can enjoy your day and you can have fun with all of your guests, because you've spent so much time, so much money, so much, you know, stress, everything for like this day to happen. And you might as well enjoy it.
Yes, and I literally every final phone call, I'm just the bad guy. I'm like, something is gonna go wrong.
Because it does.
Something's gonna happen, but it's gonna be okay. And how you treat that situation, like you said, sets the tone for everything.
If you want the dance floor to be popping,
better get on it.
You better pop it yourself.
I swear.
So, you know, like, you better have fun, because me walking on the floor as your wedding planner and starting, you know, the boogie is not going to be setting the tone
People
for
are
your wedding
be like,
day.
Oh,
what the heck?
okay. Yeah.
So, no, I just say, enjoy your day. You set the tone for your wedding. Have fun.
This is one shot. You've spent all this money.
Yes.
Come on.
Yeah. And you want it to be perfect, and that's how you do, is you relax and you let it be. You let all of the things, all of the plans, and all of those, like, they'll go into place. You just have one job, and that's to be a bride.
Yep.
To be yourself. So.
Yeah.
All right. Before we end this, tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook at Gretchen Larkan Events.
Perfect. Well, this was great.
Thanks for having
I'm
me.
stoked.
Thanks for coming on.
So much good information, and like things that I think literally everybody, vendors, brides, mother of the brides, everybody needs to listen.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for
next
having
time.
me.
As we finish this episode, we want to say a big thank you to all of the support on our podcast. You can find us at Black Tie Opt Podcast. We are on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Thank you so much for supporting our podcast.